Hello there. If you're new to this channel, welcome. And if you're a regular viewer, I'm sorry. You must be very confused. So today I'm going to talk about the new movie Priscilla. A whole lot of shaking going on indeed. And let's just get this out of the way. To make this movie, which is very much an anti-Baz Luhrmann Elvis movie a year after it comes out, it's quite bold. I've been a fan of director Sofia Coppola for a while, ever since I saw Lost in Translation in college and felt very seen. I recently rewatched The Virgin Suicides, which, oh my god, that's like one of the best movies of the 90s. In the last 15 years or so, she's been doing stuff. She's been out there trying things. Not everything I've loved, she did a remake of a Clint Eastwood movie. She made Hermione talk in an American accent. She did make a pretty good Bill Murray Christmas special. There were some hits and misses, but now I feel like she is back. She's back to making melancholic movies about privilege and abuse. So this is based on the biography that Priscilla Presley, wife of Elvis, wrote in the 1980s. And Priscilla Presley was even an executive producer on this movie, so it's completely through her perspective, with that very familiar Sofia Coppola style. I really like the way that this movie avoided a lot of cliches of the biopic. There's never like a secondary character who comes along and comments on, what's going on within the story to be like the sort of voice of how you should feel as an audience. There's no like friend character who comes along and says like, Priscilla, isn't this amazing? You're dating Elvis Presley and you're only 14. There's no scene where her like parents show back up and are like, Priscilla, you should stop taking pills. It's bad for you. It just shows us these events in a very matter-of-fact way and really kind of brings the mythology of their lives like very down to earth. Basically, Elvis as a character comes off as like what someone who at that age and who becomes really, really famous very quickly would probably really be like, which is quite weird. He's quite weird. I mean, it's already quite weird that there's a guy whose job it is to go out and look for 14-year-olds to invite to Elvis's house for company. Both an interesting story of how fame can really sort of warp a person's personality, but it's also this picture of this person who was, plucked from childhood and was like swept up in this fantasy, this fairy tale that ends up becoming just kind of a sad story. And it doesn't really glamorize too much either of their lives. I mean, there obviously are exciting highs, but there's always this tint of discontent that's like shaded over everything. At 16 years old, Priscilla moves to Memphis to be with Elvis, only for him to, immediately leave, go on the road, and go to Hollywood and film movies without her. And she's expected to just sort of wait and live at Graceland and live this very secluded life. She's essentially treated like a pet who's just there for when Elvis needs her. I just get sad thinking about my dog who sits at home all day waiting for me to come home from work. I'm sorry. Can you ever forgive me? If I could take my dog to work, I would. I think this might be a little overdone, saying that something reminded them of the pandemic in a movie, but I'm gonna go there. When seeing a number of scenes of just Priscilla being left alone at Graceland, I couldn't help but think of the pandemic and how she was sort of trapped and not really able to go anywhere or interact with anyone in a normal way. It also really emphasizes the insular life that celebrity can bring. There's this great montage of them eating meals while in bed, just like seemingly night after night watching TV, just going out with the same like group of Elvis's friends every night in like these liminal spaces with just them. In a lot of ways, it really takes the wind out of Elvis's entire career. Early on, he talks about how he wants to go study acting in New York and become a great actor like James Dean or Marlon Brando. That kind of happened, right? Then you see him throughout the film just get like swept up in these trends that just end up fueling his own ego. And he kind of just acts like how most kids act when they get really famous fairly young, which is he just shoots guns in his backyard. Kind of feels like it mirrors a lot of famous YouTubers I've heard of. It's much sadder than Baz Luhrmann's film from last year, which felt like it very much, mythologizes Elvis, and this movie is the exact opposite. At first I was like, this guy, Jacob Elordi, doesn't look anything like Elvis. Like, how are they gonna pull this off? But he actually gives a really great performance. He gives off this cocky swagger that I think even Austin Butler didn't quite capture. And Kaylee Spaney as Priscilla is also really playing her character very understated. The kind of performance that will probably get ignored around award season because unfortunately, because of its subtlety. I just really like how this movie ends with sort of a subtle act of defiancy that doesn't feel like it really needs to dramatize anything. This is a return to form, I think, for Sofia Coppola. It also has a lot of her trademarks, which is just gorgeous production design, a lot of attention to detail in every prop, every costume. If you're someone who likes a lot of her earlier films, I think there's a lot for you to dig into here. At the same time, it's not exactly the same kind of film. I think Sophia's a lot like Wes Anderson or Paul Thomas Anderson, where a lot of people fell in love with their earlier movies that they made in their 20s and 30s. Even though she's in her 50s now, I still think she's someone who's making very interesting films. They're just from someone who's not the same person that they were when they were 29. I'm getting old. So what did you think of this movie? Let me know in the comments below, and my dog is still barking. And don't forget to like and subscribe.